You ever have one of those mornings that starts off so peaceful you can almost hear the universe saying, "This one's yours"? That was me, coffee in hand, sun coming up over the lake, and a truck bed full of some of the finest lumber I'd ever sourced. I was standing in front of my granddad's old cabin, been in the family over 60 years, stacking what looked like plain firewood to anyone passing by. But to me, that pile was history. Legacy, 7 years of careful collecting across 3 states, every piece hand-picked for a furniture project I'd been dreaming of since my 20s. And then, she showed up. White SUV pulls up next door like it owns the damn shoreline. Out steps this woman, pristine outfit, manicured to the gods, walking like she's about to host a fundraiser at the country club. I'd only ever seen her wave politely from her deck the last couple months. Thought maybe she was just one of those keep-to-yourself types. Turns out, she was the keep-everything type. She storms right up to the property line, jabbing a perfectly polished finger toward my stack like it insulted her ancestors. "That's my timber," she says, her voice high and sharp, echoing across the lake like a damn siren. At first I thought she was kidding, or mistook me for someone else, but her face was dead serious. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my tone calm, "this wood came from a supplier in Wisconsin. I've got all the invoices, even photos at the yard." But she wasn't having it. She called the cops right there on the spot, yelling that I'd chopped down her oak tree in the middle of the night. I should have been angry, but honestly, I was too stunned to feel much of anything. 2 deputies showed up 20 minutes later, one older guy with a face that said he'd seen too many neighbor feuds already, and his rookie partner fresh out of the academy. She went on and on about her tree, while I handed over receipts, delivery logs, even grain pattern notes. The older deputy looked over the wood, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Ma'am, this lumber didn't come from around here. It's not even the same species." You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Nah. She looked at those documents like they were forged war plans and hissed, "He must have faked those." Then turned and stormed off like she'd lost a courtroom battle no one else was playing. That night I stood out on my porch, watching the moonlight cast long shadows across that stack of lumber, and I knew something had changed. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a war, and somehow my dream project had lit the match. Next morning I'm sipping coffee again, trying to reclaim the piece she stole, when a landscaping crew rolls up on her property. Big gear, chainsaws, brush cutters, the whole deal. They start clearing the boundary, except they're cutting across my side. One guy even rolled the big granite marker stone that's been sitting there since 1978, a landmark everyone knew. And then they started laying fence posts on my land. I walked over, survey in hand, trying to be civil. "Fellas," I said, "I think you've been given the wrong boundaries." The foreman looked sheepish and said, "Ma'am told us to follow the new stakes." Bright orange, fresh as last night's lies. That night I called up Tom Rivera. Guy's a seasoned surveyor who helped me during a renovation a couple years back. When I explained the situation, he didn't even hesitate. "Mark," he said, "if that boulder moved, we've got the old benchmarks to prove it." Tom showed up next morning and started remeasuring everything. Tree lines, iron markers, the whole works. And what he found? Victoria didn't just misplace a stone. She'd shifted 3 separate markers, all in precise directions, shaving nearly half an acre into her side. "Mark," he said, his voice low, "this wasn't confusion. This was a planned land grab." Now, I ain't one for gossip, but after that, I started asking around. Turned out she'd already filed noise complaints against an elderly couple for using a boat motor after dinner, threatened a young family over their dock violating her water rights, and forced the previous homeowners out with HOA complaints stacked 6 deep in 2 months. She'd done this before, and now she had her sights on me. So I started documenting everything. Photos, notes, even late-night footage of her snooping near my woodpile. Called up Sarah Mitchell, one of the top property rights attorneys in the state. When she saw the survey data and heard about Victoria's background, her jaw actually dropped. "Mark," she said, "this isn't just petty harassment, it's systematic theft with a side of psychological warfare." She drafted a cease and desist letter so airtight it could have been framed. We sent it certified, and instead of backing down, Victoria doubled down. She launched a full-on smear campaign online, said I was unstable, dangerous, aggressive, posted photos of herself looking weepy with captions like, "Help me stop my neighbor before it's too late." That got the community buzzing, enough that our unofficial HOA president, Margaret, called a meeting. Victoria showed up like a widow in mourning, black dress, dark sunglasses, tissues at the ready. Told them all I'd threatened her, stole her property, and that my timber was the proof. Then I stood up and laid out the truth. I passed out Tom's official survey, Sarah's letter, photos, and for good measure explained what that timber was really for. Not firewood, a handcrafted furniture set based on my great-grandfather's original designs. He was a master craftsman in the 1920s whose work is now in Midwest museums. Room went quiet. I could see Victoria calculating in real time. What she thought was just a bunch of logs was actually a gold mine. She went pale. Margaret looked down at the documents and asked, "Victoria, did you move the boundary markers?" Her answer was all bluster. "That survey's fake. I know where my land ends." But I had one more card to play. I held up a piece of walnut, smooth and clean, and flipped it over. "Every board," I said, "has this." A tiny, almost invisible stamp, my great-granddad's monogram, passed down to me, burned into every piece. The room gasped. Victoria went silent. But silence don't mean surrender. A few nights later at 2:17, motion sensors tripped. I woke up, checked my phone, and there she was. Victoria, in dark clothes, carrying an axe like she meant business. Security cameras caught every brutal second. She destroyed the rarest pieces first. The walnut from Oregon, the 200-year-old chestnut beam, the maple burl I'd been saving for a dining table. Then she smashed my cabin window, smashed the door, and worst of all, she found my grandmother's antique clock, the one my great-grandfather built by hand in 1923, and shattered it on the floor. I stepped outside, barefoot, heart pounding, axe in my hand without even knowing I'd picked it up. She stood on my lawn, smiling, like she'd just trimmed a hedge. "Maybe next time you won't steal from people," she said. And that's when Sarah pulled up, my attorney. She stepped between us, said softly, "Mark, put it down. That's what she wants. If you hit her, she wins." I dropped the axe. Cops showed up minutes later. The footage, the blood on the axe from her own cut hand, fabric caught in the window, it was all there. She was arrested on the spot. Felony vandalism, trespassing, breaking and entering. And when we got to court, she brought a sketch of the real boundaries, drawn in pen on the back of a pizza box. Claimed I faked everything. But Sarah brought out the receipts, the appraisals, the videos, and when the judge saw the value of the wood she'd destroyed, $2.3 million. Victoria fainted in court. At sentencing, the judge called her actions the worst case of property harassment he'd seen in 20 years. She got 18 months in prison, $2.3 million restitution, lost her mansion, her husband filed for divorce, and HOA banned her from ever returning. We later found police reports from 4 states showing a 15-year history of harassment, restraining orders, and even a case where she pushed an 80-year-old man into heart failure. My project? It's slowly being rebuilt, piece by piece. Not all the original wood can be replaced, but the meaning behind it, that's deeper than ever. You know, I used to think peace meant isolation, just me, my tools, and the lake. But now I know better. Sometimes peace has to be defended. Sometimes legacy needs a witness. So here I am, back in the shop, carving out the future from what's left of the past. Tell me this, do you think someone like Victoria ever really changes? Or are some people just wired to destroy what they can't control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who crossed the line, literally or otherwise, I want to hear your story. Justice doesn't come easy, but when it comes, it's worth every splinter.